Hello, everyone. Before we start, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment with where you're from and what time it is. That way, YouTube will keep pulling you into stories like this. Now, let the shadows take over. I was 34 when this happened, and I'd been driving for Uber full-time for nearly 2 years. I lived in Charleston, South Carolina, a city known for its cobblestone streets, antebellum mansions, and a strange love affair with ghost tours. Personally, I never cared for any of the supernatural stuff. To me, it was all just tourism gimmicks and stories cooked up for out-of-towners. I took pride in being a rational guy. My job was to drive, keep my car clean, and make money, not chase shadows or believe in them. But all that changed one night in early March, the night I picked up a woman who wasn't supposed to be alive. It was a Thursday, and I remember because it was particularly slow. I started my shift around 10 p.m., figuring I'd squeeze in a few airport runs or downtown pickups before closing up shop. Around midnight, I parked near the Battery, sipping a gas station coffee that tasted like burnt cardboard. That's when the ping came in. A ride request from Marion. No photo, no rider history. Pickup was listed at a house near the edge of the Battery, one of those historic brick homes with gas lamps still flickering out front. The kind of place that shows up on postcards. I pulled up and immediately felt off. The house was gorgeous, but something about it seemed too still, too untouched by time. No porch lights, no cars in the driveway. The iron gate was slightly ajar, and vines crawled up the columns like they'd been growing there for 100 years. I double-checked the address on my app, and it matched perfectly. I waited a minute, expecting someone to come out, but no one did. I was about to call the rider when I caught something in my rearview mirror. A woman was already in the back seat. I swear to God, I didn't hear the door open. I didn't feel the car shift or anything. She was just suddenly sitting there, perfectly upright, staring straight ahead. She wore a long black coat, the kind you see in old photographs, with a high lace collar and gloves that looked like they belonged in a museum. Her hair was pulled back into a tight bun, and her skin looked pale, almost waxy, under the dim cabin light. I tried not to let my surprise show. "You Marion?" I asked. She nodded slowly. "Yes," she said, her voice calm and almost too quiet, like someone speaking from another room. No small talk, no awkward joke, just stillness. The destination she had entered was Magnolia Cemetery. Now, for those who don't know Charleston, Magnolia is one of the oldest cemeteries in the state, full of crumbling statues, rusting fences, and tombstones so weathered you can barely read them. I've taken people there before, usually history buffs or photographers chasing that moody Southern Gothic vibe. But not at 1 in the morning, not from a house that felt like it hadn't been lived in for a century. Still, I started driving. The silence between us stretched on like thick fog. Every time I checked the mirror, she was sitting the same way. Hands folded, posture perfect, eyes never meeting mine. I tried making a little conversation to break the tension. "So, late night shoot or something? Ghost tour?" I asked. She didn't respond, not even a blink. About 10 minutes in, just as we were leaving the downtown area, she spoke again. Her voice was as smooth and cold as the air in the car. "You shouldn't have come to the Battery," she said. I glanced back, unsure I'd heard her right. "Sorry." She turned her head slightly, enough to catch her face in the mirror. "You don't belong there. Not at this hour." I tried to chuckle. "Well, I'm just the ride. Don't usually stay long." She didn't laugh. She just looked away again, her face melting back into the shadows. That's when I noticed something strange about her reflection in the mirror. It seemed a little delayed, like her movements weren't syncing right. I chalked it up to tiredness, maybe a trick of the light. We reached the cemetery gates around 20 minutes later. The place was closed off, big iron gates locked shut as expected. The pin on the app wasn't at the front entrance though. It was at the back, near the old section where the graves date back to the 1800s. I slowed to a stop, unsure what to do next. "Looks like it's locked," I said. "I'll have to drop you off here, unless—" I turned to look at her and nearly jumped out of my seat. The back seat was empty. I froze. My skin prickled like I'd stepped into a freezer. I hadn't heard the door open. I hadn't seen her move. She was just gone. I whipped around in every direction, opened my door, even got out and looked around the car like an idiot. The street was deserted. No footsteps, no voice, no trace of her. I climbed back into the car, shaking now, and tried to end the trip. But the app wouldn't let me. It kept saying, "Rider still in transit." I closed the app, reopened it, restarted my phone. Same message. I even tried force-ending the trip through the driver dashboard. Nothing. Then suddenly, the screen refreshed, and the destination had changed. It no longer said Magnolia Cemetery. It said home, just that. No address, no map. Just the word home in bold white text on a black screen. And beneath that, the little icon showing the rider, a gray silhouette with no photo, was now sitting in the back seat on the in-app map. I looked up, and of course the real seat was still empty. But something in me started to break. My mouth went dry. My hands clenched the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. I floored it. Didn't care about the app anymore. I drove straight home, every shadow on the road looking like someone waiting to jump out. When I pulled into my driveway, I sat in the car for a long time, too scared to turn around, half convinced she was behind me again. When I finally checked my phone, the trip was gone. No record of it. No ride history. Nothing. Like it never happened. The next day, I searched online. I didn't even know what I was looking for. Maybe some kind of prank or glitch explanation. Instead, I found a local archive of old Charleston obituaries. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through until I saw a name that made my blood freeze. Marion Holloway. Died in 1912. A socialite, reportedly went missing after leaving her family estate on the Battery. Last seen boarding a carriage late at night, heading to Magnolia Cemetery to visit her fiancé's grave. She never arrived. Her body was never found. There was a black and white sketch beside the obituary. The woman in it looked exactly like the passenger who vanished from my car. I haven't driven for Uber since that night. Not because I'm afraid of ghosts. I still don't know what she really was. But because every time I check the rearview mirror now, every time I feel the car shift or hear the creak of the leather seat, part of me expects to see her sitting there again, waiting. And sometimes, when I'm driving alone, I think I still hear her voice. You don't belong there. Back in 2022, I was living alone in Sacramento, working rideshare full-time after leaving a corporate sales job that slowly drained the life out of me. I wasn't fired, just done. I needed space to think, to breathe, and Uber gave me that in a weird way. The solitude of late-night drives, the randomness of strangers, the quiet between drop-offs. It kept me grounded, while everything else in my life felt like it was floating out of reach. I'd work mostly night shifts, 9 p.m. to 3 a.m., coasting through the half-lit neighborhoods, avoiding the bar rush when I could, and keeping a thermos of gas station coffee close enough to burn my thigh. This one night, a Tuesday, I think, was unusually cold for spring. I'd done about 6 rides and was thinking of calling it quits around 1 a.m. when a ping came through. The pickup location was a Chevron off Fulton Avenue, just outside the downtown grid. The rider's name was Bryce. No profile picture. Nothing odd about that on its own, but something about the pin bothered me. It was stuck awkwardly between the corner of the gas station and an alleyway that I knew led behind an old strip of vacant buildings. Still, it wasn't the worst area, and I figured it was just a GPS glitch. Happens all the time. I pulled into the lot, headlights sweeping across the cracked pavement. There was only one person there, a man standing beside a newspaper dispenser in a light blue windbreaker, jeans, and white sneakers. He wasn't scrolling on his phone like most passengers. He was just standing there, head down, staring at the concrete, like he was reading something invisible. When I slowed down and stopped near him, he didn't approach right away. I had to roll down my window and call out, "Bryce?" He looked up slowly, blinked once, and nodded. No smile, no, "Hey man," no small talk. Just a slow nod, and then a stiff walk to the passenger side rear door. He slid in and shut it gently, like he was trying not to wake someone. The destination on the app was a residential address about 20 minutes away, a cul-de-sac near the edge of a neighborhood I vaguely remembered driving through before. I confirmed the location aloud, and he just said, "That's right," in a voice that was strangely even, calm but flat. No emotion behind it, just words. The first 10 minutes were quiet. He didn't touch his phone, didn't look out the window, didn't even shift in his seat. He just sat there, eyes fixed forward, hands resting on his thighs. Except every couple of minutes, I'd notice him wringing his hands. Slowly at first, then tighter, like he was trying to keep them from shaking. I wasn't going to ask, but something about it was unsettling, like he was trying to prepare himself for something. We were passing through a dim stretch of road, lined with warehouses and closed auto shops, when he finally spoke. "Do you ever think about how easy it is to disappear?" he asked. I glanced at him in the rearview mirror. "Disappear?" He nodded slightly. "Yeah, just vanish. One decision. One person. That's all it takes." I laughed nervously, trying to keep it casual. "I guess I've seen a few YouTube videos on that kind of thing." He didn't laugh. He didn't even move, just stared straight ahead. "No one would even know you were gone. Not for a while. Not unless they were watching." I didn't respond to that. My fingers tightened on the steering wheel, and I kept my eyes on the road. I've had my share of awkward passengers, but this guy, there was something off. Not drunk, not high, just off. Like he was practicing a speech he hadn't finished writing. We kept driving in silence until we reached the neighborhood. The houses were modest, all with the same boxy design and slanted roofs, but what stood out immediately was the street itself. The pin led to a cul-de-sac, but the address, 331 Lakewell Drive, didn't exist. I slowed down, checking the mailbox numbers. 328, 330, 332. Nothing in between. "I think this is the wrong address," I said, half turning in my seat. "There's no 331. "That's okay," he replied quickly. "Just stop here, right by that alley." I looked to where he was pointing. A narrow, shadowy alley between two houses that led into a small wooded patch. No lights, no fences, just empty darkness. "You sure this is it?" I asked, hesitating with my foot on the brake. "Yeah. I'll just be a minute. Can you wait?" The question made my stomach clench. Something about the way he said it. Soft, but with a weight behind it. Like he wasn't really asking. Like he already knew I'd say yes. Still, I nodded. "Sure, 1 minute." He stepped out and disappeared into the alley without looking back. I kept the car running and watched the clock on my dash tick forward. 1 minute passed, then 2. No sign of him. I leaned over and peered into the alley, but it was pitch black. I didn't want to call out. I didn't want to honk. I didn't even want to roll down the window. I just waited, heart beating a little faster now. Finally, I ended the trip manually and shifted into reverse. I was done. And that's when I saw him. Not Bryce. Someone else. Another man, same height, same build. Also wearing a blue windbreaker, sprinting full speed from the alley, waving his arms, eyes wide with panic. I slammed the gas and tore down the street, not even looking back. I didn't know who he was or what was going on, but something in me snapped. Pure survival instinct. I just drove. About 3 blocks later, my phone started vibrating. It was a call, through the Uber app. I shouldn't have answered, but I did. "You left," Bryce said. His voice was calm, flat, just like before. "I told you I'd be right back." My hand started shaking. I tried to keep my voice steady. "Who was that guy?" Silence. "Who was he?" I repeated. "He wasn't supposed to be there," Bryce said. I ended the call and pulled into a CVS parking lot, heart hammering against my chest. I sat there for 10 minutes trying to process what had just happened. The alley. The second man. Bryce's voice. None of it made sense. When I got home, I logged into my trip history to report the ride. It was gone. No record of the pickup, no earnings from the trip, no rider named Bryce. I searched the Uber support forums. Nothing like this came up. No known bugs that wiped single rides from the record. It was like it never happened. For the next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about that second man. Who was he? Why was he running? Why did he look so scared? Was he trying to warn me or get help? 3 nights later, I came across a thread on Reddit. It was buried deep in a local Sacramento forum titled, "If you drive Uber, don't take late-night pickups near Fulton Avenue." The post described something eerily similar. A driver had picked up a rider named Bryce near a gas station. Blue windbreaker. Odd behavior. The man tried to get him to wait outside an abandoned house for just a minute. The driver never saw him again. The comment section was mostly dead, but one reply caught my eye. Just 4 words, posted under a burner account. "You picked him up too?" No other context. No follow-up. The account was deleted the next day. That was the last week I drove for Uber. I still don't know what was waiting in that alley. I don't know who the second man was, or why Bryce's ride disappeared from my history. But sometimes, when I park at night or check my mirror before heading out, I half expect to see him there again, sitting silently in the back seat, wringing his hands, waiting for me to take him somewhere that doesn't exist. It happened in October 2023, just a few days before Halloween. I was living alone in a townhouse on the edge of Boise, Idaho. Not the most exciting city, but I liked the quiet. I worked remotely for a software company during the day, and most evenings were spent watching horror movies or scrolling TikTok with a glass of wine. I was 27, newly single, and to be honest, kind of enjoying it. No one to clean up after. No one to share the bed with. No one to judge me for eating Uber Eats 3 nights a week. That night was cold, the kind of sharp autumn chill that made you want to bundle up and stay under a blanket. I'd been on a video call all afternoon with my boss and hadn't eaten since breakfast. So around 8:30, I opened the Uber Eats app and ordered from a Thai place I liked. Nothing fancy, just some curry and spring rolls. The app said it would be delivered in 35 minutes. Driver's name was Caleb. No profile photo, but a 4.9-star rating. I didn't think twice. I always chose contactless delivery. Ever since the pandemic, I preferred it. No awkward small talk. No need to put on a bra just to grab food. The instructions on my profile were clear. Leave food on porch. Do not knock. Around 9:15, I got the notification. Your food has been delivered. I paused the movie I was watching, got up, and went to the front door. But when I opened it, the food wasn't there. No bag. No receipt. Nothing. At first, I thought maybe he left it at the wrong unit. The townhomes were all cookie-cutter and close together. But when I stepped out onto the porch, I noticed something odd. There was a single takeout bag sitting not at my door, but about 6 feet to the left, in the middle of the grass. Not on the walkway, not near any unit. Just sitting there like someone had dropped it while walking, but placed it too neatly for that to be accidental. I walked over and picked it up. The bag had my name on the receipt, but something about it didn't feel right. It was heavy, like too heavy for what I ordered. I opened the top and looked inside. There was food, my curry and spring rolls, but also something else beneath the containers. Folded sheets of paper, at least 10 of them, handwritten. I froze. I pulled out one of the sheets and unfolded it. My stomach sank as I read the first line. "I know you eat alone." My heart pounded in my chest. I read the second line, then the third. It was like reading the ramblings of someone who had been watching me for weeks. "You always sit on the left side of the couch. You laughed at something on your phone last Thursday at 11:42 p.m. I saw you wearing a green hoodie last Sunday when you opened the blinds." The handwriting was shaky. Male, blocky, not neat. Some words were written darker, pressed harder into the paper, like the writer's hand had been trembling. I dropped the paper and looked around. No one was in sight, but the porch light flickered faintly, as if someone had just moved past it. The street was quiet. A few windows had the warm yellow glow of TVs inside, but no one else seemed to notice, or care, that I was standing in my yard holding a bag of food and a stack of threatening notes. I ran inside, locked the door, and called Uber Eats customer support. The woman on the line was polite, but when I explained what happened, she seemed confused. "Ma'am, the driver marked your delivery as completed with a photo. Can you check your app and see if the image is there?" I opened the app. There was a photo, but it wasn't of my front door. It was a picture of me, standing in the living room, in my pajamas, watching TV. The image was taken through the blinds. I couldn't breathe. I dropped the phone and backed away from the door. The window, the one he had taken the photo through, had been half closed, but clearly not enough. When I picked up the phone again, the support agent had disconnected. Or maybe I hung up without realizing. I grabbed my keys and left the house, drove to a Walmart parking lot, and just sat there for an hour, staring at the receipt, reading the notes over and over again. Every line was worse than the last. "I know you don't check the back door before bed. You fall asleep with the TV on. I can hear the same shows echo through the walls. You looked scared on Tuesday when the wind slammed your window. That wasn't the wind." That line made my skin crawl. I called the police. They sent someone to my house to check it out while I waited in my car. An officer called me and said the property was clear, no signs of forced entry. He told me to come home if I felt comfortable and file a report in person. When I returned, the Uber Eats bag was gone from the porch. The papers I'd dropped in the yard, gone. Not a single trace. I asked the officer if he'd seen a bag or any papers when he arrived. He said no. I could tell from his tone he thought I was exaggerating or imagining things. I filed the report anyway, showed them the photo in the app. That at least shook him. But when he tried to look up the delivery driver's profile, the name Caleb wasn't associated with any active accounts. There was no record of a delivery to my address, no route history, no payment confirmation. Like the whole thing had been erased. I called Uber again, demanding answers. After multiple transfers, I finally got a case manager who told me, very calmly, that sometimes fraudulent drivers use third-party apps to spoof identities and complete rides without actually being registered. It's rare, but it happens. When I asked what they were doing about it, she gave me the usual corporate answer. "We're escalating the case. It's blah blah blah." That was a year ago. I moved. New city, new phone number, new job. But sometimes when I order food, Even if it's not from Uber Eats, I still check the porch before opening the door. I stand there, staring through the peephole, waiting for something to move in the yard. And once, just once, about 3 months ago, I ordered sushi on a Friday night from a local place I hadn't tried before. The bag arrived right on time, sitting on my porch like normal. No notes, no photo in the app, just the bag. But when I opened it, under the sushi boxes, there was one single sheet of paper, folded neatly. No handwriting on the front. I unfolded it slowly. It read, "I found you." Back in 2021, I was driving for Uber in Oregon, mostly around the Portland area. I had just moved from Denver a few months earlier after a bad breakup and wanted to be somewhere green, rainy, and anonymous. Uber was a way to pay the bills while I figured out what came next. I'd usually drive the evening shift, sometimes stretching into late night if things were busy. People were mostly chill, drunk college kids, quiet tech workers, the occasional talkative tourist. Nothing too weird. Until that night. It was early November, cold and drizzling. I had just dropped off a passenger near Mount Tabor and was parked in a grocery store lot, sipping my third gas station coffee of the night when the app buzzed. The name was simply L. No last initial, no photo. Pickup location. A residential street about 10 minutes into the hills. The route looked straightforward. I accepted. As I drove, the houses became less frequent. The roads narrower and lined with moss-covered fences and towering pine trees. Fog clung to the pavement like a thin sheet of smoke. I remember checking the map again, wondering if the GPS had glitched. The pin was hovering over a gravel shoulder near an old wooden gate. No house in sight. I pulled up slowly, headlights catching the thick trees beyond the fence. I was about to call the rider when I noticed someone already standing on the edge of the road. It was a girl, maybe 19 or 20. Pale. Long black hair soaked from the drizzle, sticking to her cheeks. She wore a white sundress with lace at the edges, way too thin for the weather. She wasn't shivering, just staring. I rolled down the passenger window halfway. "Hey, Elle?" She nodded once, then opened the back door and slid in without a word. Now, I've picked up quiet passengers before, and I usually respect the silence. But something about this one was off. Her clothes were damp, but she didn't smell like rain. No shampoo, no perfume, just cold air. Her feet were bare. "Cold out tonight," I said casually, trying to break the silence. She didn't respond, just kept her gaze fixed on the road ahead. The app said her drop-off was downtown, about 25 minutes away. That was fine with me. I started driving, glancing back every now and then to make sure she was okay. Each time, she was sitting perfectly still, hands folded in her lap, eyes open, breathing barely visible. Then, maybe 10 minutes into the drive, she finally spoke. "You passed it," she said quietly. I blinked. "Sorry?" "My house. You passed it." I frowned at the app. "This is the address that was entered." "Downtown?" She didn't look at me. "That's not my home." There was no emotion in her voice, not anger, not sadness, just certainty. I was trying to think of how to respond when she added something that made my chest tighten. I didn't enter the destination. Someone else did. I didn't know what to say to that. My eyes flicked to the mirror, but she was already looking at me through it, directly into my eyes. Her stare was unsettling, like she wasn't just looking at me, but through me. I tried to keep my tone level. "Do you want me to take you somewhere else?" She shook her head, slow and deliberate. "It doesn't matter anymore." The next few minutes were painfully quiet. I kept checking the road, half expecting her to change her mind or ask to be let out. But she just sat there, unmoving. Then she spoke again. "You know this isn't real, right?" My grip on the steering wheel tightened. "What do you mean?" "This. The car. You. The road. You're dreaming it." I let out a nervous laugh. Pretty elaborate dream if I'm getting 5-star ratings. She didn't smile. She didn't even blink. Then she leaned forward, slowly, without making a sound, and whispered, "Wake up." I flinched. Her face was inches from mine in the mirror. Her eyes were wide, and for the first time, I noticed something that made my stomach twist. They didn't reflect the dashboard lights at all, just black glass. I tried to shake it off, focused on the road. "Okay, I'm ending the ride." I tapped the screen, but the app wouldn't respond. It just spun. Loading. 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 When I looked up again, we were no longer on the main road. Somehow, without turning, without any awareness of changing course, we were now driving through dense forest. No street signs, no lights, just trees on either side. And the fog, thicker now, almost milky, curled around the car like it was alive. I hit the brakes. "What the hell?" But the car didn't stop. I pressed harder. Nothing. The engine was running, speedometer steady. But the brake pedal felt soft. Dead. I looked in the mirror again. She was gone. Just like that. The back seat was empty. I swerved to the side of the road and finally got the car to stop. Heart racing, I jumped out and checked every door, every window, even under the damn seats. Nothing. The girl, Elle, had vanished. I was in the middle of nowhere, no cell signal, and now the app had crashed entirely. I tried rebooting my phone. Still nothing. Just a black screen with the Uber logo stuck in place. I waited in that car for nearly an hour before I saw another vehicle. A pickup truck, headlights flickering through the fog. I flagged them down like a madman. The driver, a middle-aged guy in a flannel jacket, looked concerned, asked if I was okay. I told him I got lost trying to drop someone off. He gave me a strange look. "This road's been closed for weeks," he said. "Landslide up past the ridge. No one uses it." I told him about the girl, her name, her dress, how she just vanished. He listened without interrupting, then asked me something I'll never forget. "Was her hair wet?" I froze. "Yeah." He nodded slowly. "You're not the first. Same story, more than once." He didn't know her name, but the rumor was that a young woman had died near that ridge years ago. Car accident in the rain, slid off the road. They never found her body. Only the vehicle. Windows fogged up, passenger door open. The same stretch I'd just been on. The next day, I checked my trip logs. No record of the ride. No passenger named Elle. No earnings. Nothing. But I remember her. Sometimes when I'm driving late at night, I still glance at the mirror and expect to see her, sitting there silently, dress soaked, eyes empty, waiting to go somewhere she can't return to. And once, not long after that night, I woke up in my car, parked on that same gravel shoulder. I hadn't driven there. I hadn't turned the ignition. But I was there. And in the passenger seat was a white envelope with one word written in shaky handwriting. "Wake up." This happened in June 2022 when I was visiting my sister in Phoenix. I'd flown in from Minnesota for a week-long stay, mostly to catch up and help her move into a new place. She was pregnant at the time, and her husband was away on deployment, so she really appreciated the company and the extra hands. Most days were spent hauling boxes, cleaning out her old condo, and dealing with Arizona heat that made the sidewalk feel like it could melt your skin. So when she finally gave me a day off, I jumped at the chance to explore the city on my own. I spent most of the afternoon wandering around Roosevelt Row. Art galleries, local food, vintage bookstores. I lost track of time, and didn't realize how late it had gotten until I stepped out of a small record store and saw the sun dipping below the buildings. I was tired, sweaty, and ready to head back. Rather than deal with the packed light rail, I opened the Uber app and ordered a ride. The driver's name was Thomas. Silver Honda Civic. Estimated arrival, 3 minutes. Everything looked normal. I waited on the curb, refreshing the app every few seconds out of habit. The car was making its way down the street on the map, little blue dot closing in fast. Then it just stopped. The icon froze about 2 blocks away. No error message, just stuck. I waited another minute before glancing up, and that's when I saw a silver Honda Civic slowly rolling up to the curb. Right make, right model. No license plate visible from the front, but it looked exactly like the one on the app. It pulled up, driver's window already rolled down. A man leaned out, mid-30s, buzzed hair, sunglasses even though it was almost dark. "You waiting for Thomas?" he asked casually. I hesitated. My phone still showed his car 2 blocks away, not moving. "Yeah, it says he hasn't arrived yet," he smiled. "App's acting weird today. You're going to East Main, right?" I hadn't told him my destination. That gave me pause. "Yeah," I said, more slowly. "Hop in. GPS just lagging out." I should have trusted my gut. I should have asked to see the license plate or double-checked the driver profile. But the car looked right. He sounded confident, and I was tired and distracted. So I got in. He didn't say much once we were moving. No music, no small talk, just the hum of tires against pavement and the occasional blinker click. The windows were slightly tinted, and the interior smelled faintly of cigarette smoke. Not fresh, but stale, like it had soaked into the seats over time. About 5 minutes into the ride, I noticed something strange. He wasn't following the route. I glanced at my phone and saw that the app still had Thomas stuck on the other street. No sign of this ride being active. The route it should have taken was a straight shot, 15 minutes max. But we'd already made 3 unfamiliar turns, all in the opposite direction. "Hey, are you sure this is the fastest way?" I asked. The driver didn't answer. He kept his eyes on the road. I tried again, louder this time. "Excuse me." He finally spoke, voice low and even. "Just taking a detour, avoiding construction." That didn't sit right. I'd passed the construction zone earlier in the day. There wasn't any major work near the downtown area, at least not enough to justify this much of a detour. "Can you just follow the map?" I said, trying to sound calm but firm. He didn't respond. I felt my chest tighten. Something was wrong. I opened the Uber app again, ready to cancel the trip or contact support. But there was no ride listed. No history of any ongoing trip. No driver named Thomas. That's when I looked at the lock on the door. The child lock was on. I reached for the window control, also disabled. I froze. I knew then I was in the wrong car. My voice cracked when I said, "I need you to pull over. Right now." Still nothing. I reached into my bag for my phone, hands shaking. But he glanced at me through the rearview mirror and said something that made my blood run cold. "Don't. You'll drop it." His voice was different now. Colder. Controlled. Like someone rehearsing a line, not speaking spontaneously. I said again, louder this time, "Let me out of the car." He didn't raise his voice, didn't even look back. "If you try to open the door while we're moving, you'll break your neck." I considered screaming, banging on the window, anything. But I had no idea where we were anymore. We were out of the city, on a dark stretch of road surrounded by open desert. No lights, no traffic, just the low growl of the engine and my own panic. Then I noticed something on the dashboard, a small sticker. It wasn't an Uber decal, it was a Lyft one, faded and peeling. I knew then, without a doubt, this car wasn't linked to any active rideshare app. This guy had been waiting near the pickup zone, watching for distracted people like me. Tired, alone, not paying attention. I thought fast. "Listen," I said, trying to steady my voice. "My sister's a cop. She's expecting me. She tracks my rides. If I don't check in, don't lie," he cut in. "No one's tracking you." That crushed something in me. He didn't say it like a taunt. He said it like he knew. I looked down at my phone and quietly held the side button to activate emergency SOS, praying the signal would hold. But before I could press the final confirmation, he slammed on the brakes. The car skidded onto a dirt shoulder and stopped. He turned around fully then, resting one arm on the passenger seat. His face was expressionless, calm, like a teacher explaining something to a student. "This is the part where you don't move," he said, "or scream." I didn't listen. I reached for the door handle with everything I had and yanked it. Locked. But I didn't stop there. I kicked the back of the driver's seat hard. He twisted and tried to grab my leg, but I had already pulled a small canister of pepper spray from my purse, something my sister had insisted I carry, and let him have it. His scream was muffled by the closed windows, but I didn't wait to see what happened next. I unlocked the door manually, threw my shoulder into it, and stumbled out onto the gravel. I ran, didn't look back, didn't think, just sprinted into the dark desert with my phone clutched in my hand. Somehow, by some miracle, the emergency signal worked. The call connected just long enough for me to blurt out my location before it dropped again. I hid behind a large rock formation, trying to steady my breathing, every shadow feeling like it was about to reach for me. I don't know how long I waited there before I saw flashing red and blue lights in the distance. When the officers arrived, I was still crouched, shivering despite the heat. I told them everything. They searched the road, the surrounding area, but the car was gone. Vanished. They told me I was lucky that a few women in nearby counties had reported similar things over the last year. Fake rides, wrong license plates, missing persons. They hadn't connected the dots yet, but they were starting to. When I asked Uber about the ride the next day, they confirmed there was never a completed trip with my name that night. The request had glitched out. Thomas, the real driver, messaged me 15 minutes after I disappeared from the curb, asking if I was still there. I wasn't. I gave police everything I could: description of the man, the car, the partial plate number I remembered seeing before I ran. They never found him. I don't use Uber anymore, not because I'm afraid of the platform. I know it's mostly safe, but because I'll never again be able to trust that the car pulling up is the one I'm meant to get into. Now, whenever I see a silver Civic pass me by, even in broad daylight, my heart skips a beat. Because somewhere out there, he's still driving, still hunting, still pretending to be someone you called. And if I hadn't noticed the route, if I hadn't carried that pepper spray, I'd be a photo on a bulletin board. Another "she got into the wrong car" story. Another ghost that no one ever saw again. It was during the early months of the pandemic in 2020, the kind of time where everything felt like a half-forgotten dream. The streets were quieter than I'd ever seen them. Businesses were shuttered, and the only people outside after dark were grocery clerks, nurses, and the occasional burnout who still thought quarantine was optional. I was driving for Uber in Atlanta, mostly night shifts, because my day job at a marketing firm had been frozen until further notice. Bills kept coming, so I kept driving. Most nights were uneventful, sometimes even peaceful. The silence of a city like Atlanta at 1 a.m. is eerie, but in a strangely calming way. Streetlights flickering, empty intersections stretching for blocks, and the occasional hum of an ambulance somewhere in the distance. It gave you time to think, or more often, to zone out and listen to bad true crime podcasts while waiting for the next ride. One Tuesday night, just before midnight, I got a ping from a rider named Emily. No last name, no profile picture, just Emily, and a pickup pin placed on Glenridge Drive, a stretch of road that cut through a heavily wooded neighborhood on the north side of town. The destination was listed as 842 Oakmere, a suburb I was vaguely familiar with, maybe 20 minutes away. The rating was 4.7, which didn't raise any red flags. I accepted the ride and headed toward the pickup. The drive there was dark. Not nighttime city dark. This was dense, almost rural in feeling. Trees thickened on either side of the road, and the streetlights got fewer and farther between until I felt like I was driving through a tunnel carved out of the forest. Still, the GPS kept saying I was on the right track. Eventually, I pulled up to the pin's location, a gravel shoulder on the side of the road, near a crooked wooden fence. The house was barely visible behind the trees, and the only light came from a single lamppost that flickered like it was on its last breath. That's when I saw her. She was standing just beneath the flickering light, a slender woman in a long coat with a dark umbrella open above her, even though it hadn't rained all day. Her back was to me. She didn't move when I pulled up, didn't glance at the headlights or acknowledge the car at all. I rolled down the window. "Emily." She turned her head slowly and gave a single nod. I couldn't see her face clearly under the umbrella. Her movements were too smooth, like she was floating just a half step off beat with reality. I felt a weird tightness in my chest, but I was tired, probably overthinking it. She opened the rear door, got in, and sat directly behind me. No small talk, no hello, no movement. She just folded her hands in her lap and stared forward, her face mostly hidden by the shadow of her hood. The GPS confirmed the destination again. 842 Oakmere, 22 minutes. We started driving. The car was silent for most of the ride. No music, no phone buzzes, not even a cough. I kept glancing in the mirror, trying not to be obvious, but every time I looked, she was exactly the same. Upright posture, still hands. Head turned slightly toward the window like she was looking at the trees, though it was impossible to see anything in that darkness. About 10 minutes in, I decided to try breaking the ice. "Rough shift?" I asked, just to fill the space. She didn't respond, not even a shrug. I gave up after that and kept driving. As we got closer to the destination, the neighborhood changed. Streetlights reappeared, sidewalks lined with tidy lawns and perfectly spaced mailboxes. I pulled onto Oakmere Lane and slowed as we approached number 842. The house was a typical two-story, brown shutters, sloped driveway, porch, light off. Every other house on the block had a warm glow in at least one window, but 842 sat in complete darkness. Still, the GPS said we'd arrived. I pulled to a gentle stop and shifted into park. "We're here," I said, turning slightly. Emily didn't move. "You okay?" I asked. Still nothing. Then, finally, her voice, quiet and calm, broke the silence. "This isn't it," she said. I looked back at the address. "It's the one in the app. Oakmere 842, right?" She didn't answer that. Instead, she slowly opened the door and stepped out, pausing by the edge of the curb to stare up at the house. She stood perfectly still, raincoat barely shifting in the wind, the umbrella now closed and dangling from her hand like it weighed nothing. After about 10 seconds, she leaned slightly toward my window and said something that sent a cold ripple through my spine. "They're still inside?" I blinked. "What do you mean?" But she was already turning away. She walked up the path, not toward the front door, but around the side of the house, and vanished into the shadows. I sat there for a minute, unsure what I'd just witnessed. Eventually, I ended the ride manually, told myself she probably lived nearby and was avoiding someone at home. I left, headed back toward the main road, and figured that was that. But 25 minutes later, I got another ping. Same name. Emily. Same pickup. Glenridge Drive. Same destination. 842 Oakmere. Same profile. No photo. No notes. My stomach tightened. Maybe her phone glitched. Maybe she canceled and rebooked. Still, it felt wrong. I accepted the ride anyway. Part of me wanted to know if she'd be there again. Morbid curiosity. When I arrived at the pickup, my breath caught. She was standing in the exact same spot. Same posture, same umbrella, same coat, same flickering lamppost. It was like time had rewound. Everything was identical. She got in without speaking, sat behind me again, and I drove the exact same route. I tried asking questions this time. Are you okay? Do you need help? Why are you going back? Nothing. Not even a glance. When we reached the house again, she stepped out, said, "They're still inside," and vanished behind the same side gate. I didn't end the ride this time. I left it running and pulled around the block to clear my head. My hands were shaking. I reopened the app and saw something that made my mouth go dry. There were 2 active trips on my account, both from Emily, both showing in progress, both marked as ongoing in different parts of the map. I tried ending them manually, but the app froze, completely locked up. I restarted my phone. When it came back on, the screen flashed briefly before the Uber app reopened automatically, showing a new message. Rider en route. Do not exit vehicle. I stared at that screen like it had just spoken aloud. No option to cancel. No way to back out. The app forced me back to the Glenridge pickup screen, the same loop, ready to begin again. I didn't drive back. Instead, I shut off my phone completely, pulled over at a gas station, and sat under the floodlights trying to convince myself I was sleep-deprived, hallucinating. Something. Anything but what it felt like. That I was trapped in someone else's ride, and she was the one in control. That night, I didn't go home. I crashed at a buddy's place. Didn't tell him why. Just said I needed a spot to crash. The next morning, I opened the Uber app again. All ride history from the night before? Gone. No record of any trip with Emily. No fares. No timestamps. It was like none of it happened. But I knew it did. A few days later, curiosity got the better of me. I drove by 842 Oakmere during daylight. The house looked normal. Lawn mowed. Curtains drawn. But there was no car in the driveway, no mailbox. It looked lived in, but hollow. A neighbor was watering her plants across the street. I asked her about the house, said I was thinking of moving nearby. She shook her head. That place has been empty for months. Poor girl died there last year. Gas leak or something. No family ever came to claim anything. I asked, "Do you remember her name?" She paused, then said it like she wasn't sure I should know. Emily. Quiet girl. Real sad. I drove home in silence. That night, I didn't open the app. I didn't want to see it. But when I opened my phone to check email, there was a notification anyway. Your next trip is ready. No name, no button to accept. Just a grayed-out banner. And below it, a small line of text that made my stomach knot. Rider already in vehicle. I looked up at the mirror. No one was there. But I swear, for just a second, I smelled rain.